Hi guys, and welcome to your first online marine biology class with CTYI. I know this is very different from what we're normally used to, but we're going to try and make do anyway. I don't know if your school teachers are doing something similar with you, or if they're just posting work up online for you to work off of, but I am doing this with some of my students in secondary school, where I will film a class and then send it to them so that they can keep up with their work. So we're going to have a go at doing that here now. Before we start, I just wanted to say that I hope you all are safe and well, and all your families are safe and well as well. I hope you get a chance to enjoy the Easter break a little bit and get to go outside, but make sure that you keep social distancing when you do go outside, and make sure that you keep washing your hands when you come back in. Okay, so today's lesson, so far we've looked at lots of different groups of animals. We've looked at marine mammals, we looked at cephalopods, your octopus, your squid, and your cuttlefish. And we looked at marine reptiles, and we looked at some fish in the form of the cartilaginous fish. So we looked at sharks and rays and skates. The main focus I want to look at today is the bony fish, which are called teleosts. And today's lesson will involve a dissection as well. So the plan would have been to have dissected a fish with you guys in class, but because we can't do that, I'm going to dissect a fish here in my kitchen and record it, and hopefully you guys will be able to see the different steps and all of the different of parts of the fish as we go through. Okay, so I'll be flicking between myself and the presentation so you guys can see, and I'll add the presentation then as well for you guys to look at, so you'll have a couple of different files that you'll be able to flick back and forth through. Okay, so we'll start anyway, and the first thing I want you guys to do is have a look at these different fish and see if you can name any. So there's 6 different fish here. You can pause the video if you want to take longer to try and see if you can name them. And one of them is actually a freshwater fish, and the other 5 are all marine species. Some you find around seaweed, some you find really, really deep in the ocean, some around coral reefs, and some swim in the open ocean, kind of close enough to some reefs. So I'll see if you can name them, and then I will go through them. So this guy up in the top left corner is our freshwater fish that I put in just because they're very, very beautiful, and he's called a Siamese fighting fish. And they're very common pets because they are so beautiful. This is a male, and the only reason they have their fighting fish name is because if you put 2 males in together, they will fight, usually until one of them kills the other one. But they are fine with other fish. I'm sure you all got this guy. This is a seahorse, and this is the one that you would regularly find around seaweed, attached to the seaweed, and their shape kind of camouflages them in so they can hide away from predators. We'll talk more about seahorse later. This guy here is called a lionfish, and he's actually very, very invasive in different parts of the world at the moment. They have modified fins that actually have a venomous spine in them, so they can give you quite a nasty sting if you try to grab them. I'm sure every single one of you got this one. This is Nemo, a clownfish, and you find Nemo in an anemone, which has stinging tentacles, and the clownfish lives in among those tentacles and is immune to the stings, and that protects them from any predators. I'm not too sure how many of you would have got this fish. This is a very, very deep sea fish called a blobfish, and when you bring them up to the surface, they look very sad. But when they're down under the water, they don't look quite as blobby. And then this last one here on the bottom right is a pufferfish, and it's all swollen up now. Why they swell up is when they feel threatened, they swell up, and it actually takes an awful lot of energy for them to swell up. So how they swell up is they don't swell up with air. Remember that they're underwater now, so they suck in loads and loads and loads of water, and it fills them up like a water balloon. And then when they're out of danger, they can spray the water back out their mouths. And this is a really, really effective defense mechanism. It makes it difficult for a shark to bite into them or anything like that. And these spines are venomous as well. Okay, so moving on. Fish are a huge, diverse group of of animals. A few years ago, a scientist who goes by the name of Stephen Jay Gould who had been studying fish for about 20 years, and he came out with the sentence that there is no such thing as a fish. And the reason he is saying that is because fish as a group are so diverse and so different from each other that you can't really group them together. So let's say, for example, he stated that a salmon is more closely related to a camel than it is to a hagfish, so that therefore you couldn't just name all of the different fish species as fish and then indicated that there was no such thing as a fish. But we are going to look at a few different groups of different kinds of fish, including the hagfish, which is a very, very unusual fish that I'll talk about. The main two groups we're going to be talking about are the jawless fish, which are lampreys and hagfish, and our teleosts, our bony fish. So our fish, we know they all live in water, either marine or freshwater, and we're going to be more focused on the marine side of things, it being a marine biology class. They don't have lungs, and instead of how they get their oxygen from the water is they use gills. And their lungs have, what would have been their lungs is converted into a swim bladder. And a swim bladder can take in air, and it allows the fish to control its buoyancy, so where it is in the water column. They're cold-blooded ectotherms, so most fish don't generate their own heat. Some fish species do, like the orange roughy. And they have a lateral line to sense vibrations, and I will talk about that, and I will show you during the dissection exactly where the lateral line is. I'll show you through these slides as well, but it's a very, very unique system to fish, and I talked a little bit about it with the sharks, and it picks up small vibrations. So if you're a prey species, it can pick up a vibration that will inform you that there's a predator on the way, and likewise if you're a predator, it can pick up vibrations of prey species swimming away from you, so it can help you hunt or it can help you escape. Their bodies are covered in scales, except for eels, which are a little bit slippier, and fins instead of limbs. But some fish actually use their fins like we would for walking, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. They have a 2-chambered heart, which is a lot different to us. We have a 4-chambered heart, 2 chambers on each side, where these only have a 2-chambered heart. And then they have a swim bladder, like I was talking about. And most fish lay lots and lots and lots of eggs. So there's about 28,000 known species alive today, and 27,000 of those are bony fish. So the vast, vast majority are bony fish. Now there's 970 species of shark and ray, and we already did a class on those. So for this class, we're going to avoid talking too much about sharks and rays, but we will talk a little bit about our lamprey and our hagfish. There's 108 different species of those, and a few of those species are actually found in Ireland. The river lamprey, which is this guy here, and the brook lamprey and the sea lamprey. Actually, I think this might be a sea lamprey. And you can see they've got rows of sharp teeth, but they lack a jaw to actually move those teeth, so they can't bite per se, or they can bite, but they can't move their teeth. They can't bite by moving their teeth. So what they have to do is they have to grip on and then shake their whole body, and that bites off little parts. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is the jawless fish, and then we'll move on to the bony fish. So they have a mouth and they have teeth, but they've no jaw, so they can't move the teeth to bite, so they have to move their whole body to bite. So this picture here is a hagfish, and you can see it's got the rows of teeth, but it's got no jaw to move those teeth up and down. The hagfish live in the deep sea. A lot of the lampreys don't live in the deep sea. Some live in rivers, and some migrate between rivers and the sea, like salmon. The hagfish, though, is the one we're going to look at in more detail. And they are mud burrow. They burrow in the mud and they swim around like an eel. And what they do is they find the carcass of an animal that's died. This unfortunate shark has died, and many hagfish will come and bite in and start to scavenge that dead animal. Then They feed on dead or dying animals, and they've got a really strong muscular tongue to help tear off flesh from the dead animal. They can knot their bodies to give force and to escape a grip. So if a person catches one in their hand, they release this thick slime, and they can release loads of it. It mixes with the water and it makes this big thick mucus. So if a predator like a shark comes along and eats them, they release all this mucus and the shark ends up spitting the hagfish back out, and then its jaws kind of get stuck together. A single thread of that slime is 100 times thinner than hair, but it's much, much stronger. So it's a really strong, thick slime. Now guys, what I'll get you to do is I'll get you to pause my video, and I've sent 2 different YouTube videos along with this, okay? So both are going to be about the hagfish. So what I want you to do is to pause the video now in a minute and watch the first video, which is Richard Hammond's Miracles of Nature, and that looks at how effective the hagfish slime is at helping the hagfish get away from any predators. And the second video then I want you to watch is the next YouTube video, and it is called The Hagfish is the Slimy Sea Creature of Your Nightmares, and it looks at the hagfish in its natural habitat, so in the deep ocean, and how they work together feeding on the carcass of an animal that's died. And they are 2 pretty interesting videos, and it just gives you an idea into the lifestyle of a very, very unusual fish. So we're going to move on to the teleosts now, which are our bony fish. And remember I said that out of 28,000 different species of fish, about 27,000 are bony fish. So they're a huge group of animals, and they're very, very, very diverse. So they have evolved different colors and different body shapes and different patterns, all to fill different niches in the marine habitat. So the niche is the role that an organism plays in its habitat. So they fill all of these different niches, and in response to that they all have different body shapes. So I'm going to show you again a few pictures of bony fish, and you can pause the video. I'll leave the video running for a few minutes as well, but you can pause the video if you want to take longer and see if you can identify the fish, and then I'll go through which ones they are. And then we'll talk a little bit about the cool adaptations that some of them have evolved over time to help them get away from predators. Okay guys, so moving on to our teleosts, which are our bony fish. Again, what I've done here is I've put 1 freshwater fish in, and all the rest are marine species. So you can have a look and see if you can guess which one is the freshwater species. And if you happen to know the name of any of the others, have a guess and see if you can guess the name of any of the other fish. Some of them are found again around coral reefs, and some are found in the open ocean. And a fish that swims in the open ocean is called a pelagic fish. And some fish swim around coral reefs. There's two species which you get in Ireland. One is quite common to Ireland, and one is a rare visitor. So see if you can identify which ones are the Irish species as well. So if you pause the video, you can spend time doing that, and I'll go on here and give you all the answers. So this guy here is very closely related to a seahorse. It's called a sea dragon, and you can see that its fins are modified to look like seaweed. They look like the leaves of a seaweed plant, and so they're brilliantly camouflaged in with the seaweed. This big guy here is a type of eel, but it's a specific type of eel called a moray eel. They're usually found in warmer waters, but with climate change there have been a couple recorded off Ireland, and not very common at all. But they are very, very cool if you ever get a chance to go diving when you're a little bit older. These guys are cool to see out swimming. Usually you only see their heads, and the rest of them are hidden in a rock. We'll go back up here then. This fish here is the one freshwater fish that I was talking about. It is found in the Amazon River, and it is a red-bellied piranha. So there's a few more in the back here. They live in these big schools of fish, and when something falls into the water, they take little bites, but because there's so many of them in the big school, they can strip an animal of all of its meat very, very quickly. Then below him is a little boxfish. If you've ever been to the aquarium in Bray, I think they have a few of these little boxfish there. They're very cute. And then we've got a common Irish species. This here is called a clown wrasse. And you can see that it's very, very colourful. And this is a male, and it's got these bright blue and bright orange colours on it. And I must excuse myself there, I just made a small mistake. This isn't called a clown wrasse, it is called a cuckoo wrasse. And the cuckoo wrasse is really interesting because the males are really brightly coloured, which happens with a lot of animals. It's up to the males to attract in the females. But what the females can do, they're a bit of a duller coloration, is that they can go through a process where they change from female into male, and it takes about 7 months. So if there's no males in the area, a female can change into a male, to ensure that the population that has new young to come in that area. And these guys are common enough around Ireland, so if you ever go scuba diving around Ireland, there's a good chance you'll see a cuckoo wrasse. Okay, we'll go right into the deep ocean then. For this guy is an anglerfish. Now, this photo was taken with a flash, obviously, but normally it would be so dark down there that all you would see would be this little appendage on the top of its head. And this has bioluminescent bacteria inside it, so it can light up. And what it does is, it lights up and it attracts in other fish that think that they're coming in for a tasty meal. And then when they get too close, the anglerfish just opens its mouth and gobbles them up. Another deep sea species then is this fish down here. It's called the barrel-eye fish. I hope you can see where my clicker is pointing now so that you know which fish I'm talking about as I'm going through them. But it's called the barrel-eye fish because you can see these big green orbs in the top of the skull. Well, first of all, the thing you notice is that it's got a translucent skull. The top of its head is see-through. And these big green orbs are actually its eyes. And it can look up through the roof of its head. So if a predator is coming in from above, it can look up straight through its skull and up into the water column and see if any predators are coming along. So it's a very, very cool adaptation to help this animal survive. This guy here likes to swim kind of close to reefs, a little bit in the open ocean. They are top predators. This is a barracuda, and you can actually see the lateral line in this barracuda. Just if you follow my pointer along there, that's the lateral line. So barracuda have rows of sharp teeth, and they swim in schools of fish as well. And last but not least is an occasional visitor to Ireland, but a huge, huge fish. Actually the heaviest bony fish there is out there, and really, really bizarre looking shape. And this is the sunfish. Mola mola is its Latin name. So you'll hear me refer to it as either the sunfish or mola mola. And you can see how big it is compared to this scuba diver over here. And they are huge. They can grow to about 3 meters, and we'll talk a little bit more about them in a minute. So I said before that their lungs have evolved into swim bladders to stop them from sinking, so they can control their buoyancy in the water, and that most of the fish in the world are bony fish. So we've got our puffer fish, our lionfish, which we talked about already. These guys are called pipefish. They're long and stretched out. Seahorses. There's a whole different variety of flatfish. So you've got dab and flounder and plaice, little blennies. This is a parrotfish. This lovely colourful fish is a parrotfish, and they've got a sharp beak here which helps them. They live on coral reefs and they feed on the coral. So this sharp beak here helps them pull off little bits of coral that they can eat. We have our eels. This is actually a wolf eel, which is specialised in eating sea urchins. So you know the balls with all the spikes that you see sometimes at the seaside, particularly if you've ever been to Spain or Portugal or anywhere like that, and you go for a snorkel and you can see these balls of spikes, which are closely related to starfish, I should add. But the wolf eel specialises in chomping down on those fish, to the giant grouper, this big massive grouper fish that you have here. So I'm going to show you a cool video of a fish. I'm not going to tell you what it is because they talk to you about what it is in the video, and then I'll talk about it after.
Yeah, there's something dark over to the left-hand side, sort of in the center. It's moving along there. This thing here. Can we take a look at that?
What is that? Oh, wow.
Looks like a Muppet.
What are you?
What is
It's
that?
like a, huh.
Oh, it's a
It's
fish.
defensive.
It's in the water column.
That's a fish?
What? I don't know.
What? Wow.
It looks like me.
Is it engorged or is it like that?
Is it mad?
Yeah.
Touch it.
Is it just...
Look!
Oh my god!
Look at that.
Oh my
Wow.
goodness.
Look at
Oh my god.
It's kind of like googly eyes.
I think he ate too much.
Yeah.
He's full.
Wow.
Wow.
We really ticked him off.
What?
Oh, that looks like the gill, aren't you? The gill?
Some kind of...
What is
Whoa.
it?
Wow. It just got so big.
It's all bladder.
Oh my god.
That's his defense. Like, let me
Oh,
blow
yeah.
up so I can show him how big I am.
Incredible.
Wow.
Yep, he's doing the shake.
What's a
Oh my
Yes.
God. Is that a gopher eel then?
Wow.
Yes.
So, yeah. That is crazy.
That was awesome.
That was awesome. What a way to end the watch, right?
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay, so that was a gulper eel that the Nautilus team came across. If you Google Nautilus Live, you can follow. They go down in ROVs, which is a remotely operated vehicle, like a small submarine, a remote control submarine, and they film looking for new species. It's really, really cool. So they're kind of exploring the deep ocean. If you Google that, you can have a look at some of their videos. But they came across that gulper eel, and it got a fright. So its reaction to thinking that it was going to be predated or attacked was to swell up. So it took in a huge amount of water, and its jaws can extend and expand, and it's got loose skin which can fill up with water like a big water balloon. So it looks like an eel with a big water balloon on the front of its head. And you saw then, as the water was being released, it could fold its jaw, the skin back up under its jaws, and close its gill arches there. It's just a very, very, very cool species. So let's go on now and have a closer look at the ocean sunfish, mola mola, which is the heaviest fish in the world. It's just a huge, big, heavy fish. And we'll also have a little look at the longest fish that's ever been recorded. So our ocean sunfish is the heaviest of the bony fish. They've been observed up to 3 meters long and weighing up to 2,303 kilograms. So absolutely huge and very, very heavy. And they are very unusual looking. So you can see they've got these weird fins. The caudal fin is all is kind of shortened and squished up against the back of the body. This part here is the face and the mouth, the eyes. This is a pectoral fin, and the dorsal fin and the anal fin or the pelvic fin are like paddles. And they're so big that sometimes they swim at the surface of the water and other fish take shelter underneath their bodies. The longest fish then is the king of herrings. It's a type of oarfish. So they're absolutely really, really, really long in length here. You can see all of the people. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15 people to carry it. And they can grow up to 11 meters long, and their body is shaped like an eel, but they're not actually an eel. They are a fish, or a different kind of fish, more closely related to a herring. Our octopus, or our seahorse then, sorry. So seahorses, as you can see here, you've got the female in the bottom corner there. And what she does is she deposits her eggs in the male, and it's the male then that where the eggs develop, and it's the male who gives birth. So here's the mom down here. She deposits her eggs into the pouch that the male has in the front of his belly. And they get fertilized there and they grow, and it's the male who gives birth. And when he gives birth to fully formed little tiny baby seahorses. So loads of them come out now. A lot of them, unfortunately, would be predated because they're so small. They've been making tasty snacks for other fish. But a few will grow into adulthood. And you can see that he does give birth to quite a few in one go. One other very interesting fish, because it's thought that it resembles a type of animal that might have come out millions of years ago when the first fish left the sea and came up onto land and became amphibious. You remember, an amphibian now is something that lives in water and on land, and that is the mud skipper. So the mud skipper is a type of bony fish, and they do come up onto the land as well as in the water. Obviously, they like to hang out in mud, and they use their tail to flip themselves up really high, particularly when they're getting ready to mate. So you can see this is a male here with his red fin, and he would flick himself up off the ground, and that's where they get the name mud skippers from. So they can breathe air. Unlike other fish, they can breathe air through their skin and through their mouths, like amphibians, but they have gills as well. And what's really cool about them is that they can use their fins or modify so that they can actually walk on land. So they whip their tail back and forth and they use their pectoral fins to walk on land. And they can survive out of water for quite some time as long as they can keep themselves wet. So they stay in the wet mud, or they stay in or under seaweed, under wet seaweed. So now I'm going to go on to talking about different parts of a fish. And that way, when we're talking about the fish that I actually have to dissect, when I'm talking about the different parts, you'll know what they are. So I'm just going to go through the last few slides which show you the different parts of the external anatomy of a fish, basically. And then we'll have a look at our fish that we have here. So here is going to be our model fish, and we'll start having a look at the different parts and their functions. So the eye of a fish are always open. They don't have any eyelids. They do have protective lens kind of across the eye, which helps the eye to stay open without having to close. And inside the eye there is the lens, which when we dissect our fish we will attempt to get out, and so you guys can have a look at it. And different fish, different marine species altogether, all have very, very different eyes. The eyes are quite beautiful of different animals. So you've got from the crab to shrimp. This here is an octopus eye, and there's a whale eye here which you can't really see, unfortunately. But yeah, lots of different fish eyes, which are all really cool. The mouth then is used to catch food. Only some fish have teeth. Something that's interesting is that a lot of fish have different modifications or adaptations to their mouths that let them eat in different ways. So the pacu has these big, thick, they're almost human-like teeth, and that is for crushing vegetation. I actually think this might be a freshwater species, I think, but they crush down vegetation with these big, thick teeth that they have. This here is called a sarcastic fringe fish, and you can see it can open its mouth into a kind of a scary, to make itself look really, really scary. And what it does is, the reason it does this is because it's quite territorial. So if another male, this is a male fish here, if another male comes into this guy's territory, he's going to open up his mouth really, really wide. And what the two of them do is they kind of bash mouths together, almost as if they were kissing, to try and scare each other off. Our next fish here is a sling jaw wrasse, and you can see why it gets its name. It can actually shoot its mouth right out to catch a fish. That's a sling jaw wrasse, and it's not the only fish species that can do something similar to this. The goblin shark can extend its jaws really far as well to bring in a fish. So this is a goblin shark. So yeah, different fish species have different mouths to enable them to do different jobs, be it crushing down thick vegetation, or catching a tasty meal, or defending your territory and trying to scare off would-be predators. The body of the fish then is protected by thin layer, but hard layer of overlapping scales. And these scales are covered in a slime, and that slime actually protects them from bacteria. The lateral line, which I've talked about before earlier, and when we were talking about the sharks, it's a line of very small pores which can sense movements and vibration in the water. So if you're a predator, it can help you pick up prey, find where prey is, and if you're prey, it can help you escape from a potential predator. The gills are hidden under the gill cover, which is called the operculum, and the operculum covers the gills. The gills are on the inside there. Water flows into the mouth and over the gills, and as that water is flowing out over the gills, oxygen is taken in by the gills. So remember, they don't have lungs. When we breathe in air, the oxygen goes down into our lungs, into our alveoli, and across into our blood vessels, and then the blood brings the oxygen around to the rest of your body. But the fish don't have lungs, so the gills do that for them. And you'll see that in more detail when we're doing our dissection. Different fish have different style of tails. Then this here is called a caudal fin. The tail fin is called a caudal fin. It swings from side to side to move forwards. So it swings left and right to move the fish forward. But different fish have different kinds of tails. So a fish that would have this kind of tail, a continuous caudal fin that's running quite a lot over a lot of the body, you might see in an eel, and it's usually associated with fish that are good at swimming around cracks and crevices or going into holes. This fish tail shape is a lunate or a moonfish shape, and it's a fast swimmer. So you tend to think of something like a mackerel, which is the fish that we'll be dissecting, or a tuna to have a fish tail shape like this, or maybe not a mackerel, because the next tail here is what you would associate with a mackerel for swimming constantly. And what's really interesting about the mackerel is they don't have a swim bladder. The Atlantic mackerel doesn't have a swim bladder, and the reason, because it doesn't have a swim bladder, it can't use that. It doesn't have a buoyancy control device, so it has to constantly swim. It can't stop swimming, so they're always swimming quite fast. And if they did stop swimming, they would start to sink. So even when they're asleep, they need to be swimming. Then fish with a truncated tail, which is this one here, or a round tail. And they're usually slow swimmers, but they're quite strong. So they can get a lot of force when they swing this big tail. And if we look at the other fins then, on the top here, you've got the dorsal fin. And behind that, you've got what's called a soft dorsal fin. And these fins are used to help balance the fish in the water, so the fish doesn't flop on its side. The pectoral fin then are used to help it turn left and right. So these are the fins on the side. The fins on the bottom then, the pelvic fins, can help the fish go up and down, but they're also used for balance as well. And the anal fins help with the balance of the fish as well, stop the fish from rolling on its side. So they come in lots of different shapes and sizes. Some are made of cartilage, some are made of bone, and some are modified into all sorts of different things. So we'll have a look at a few different modifications of fins now. So I talked before about the lionfish, and the lionfish's fins have been modified. So you can see the spines here kind of stick up, and they can give a venomous, painful sting if you were to get stuck by one of them. The frogfish, the pectoral fins have been completely modified to allow them to walk along the seabed, which is really cool, I think. So they can actually just walk along where they want to go. The flying fish, its pectoral fins have modified to be really, really large to help them escape predators. So if a predator is coming at them from under the water, they can shoot up and they can fly for quite a distance to get away from the predator. The one thing that they have to watch out for is birds. So if they're jumping out of underwater predators, jumping out of the way of the underwater predator, they might get picked off by a bird. So they have to make sure that their flight's not too high, but not too low, to get away from both the fish and the bird predator. And the last one we look at is this guy here. So this is a relatively ugly fish, and the reason he's kind of bumpy and all brown and kind of mossy looking is because of his camouflage. So you can see when it goes back to the start here, he blends in with the rock really, really well. So he's an ambush predator, and the fish doesn't know he's there, and he comes up and eats the fish. And the reason I put him in is because he's got a modified dorsal fin that has a spine in it. And the spine is really, he's really venomous. He gives a huge, potent dose of venom. He's called a stonefish, and he lives in Australia, in the coastal regions. And sometimes people that are going out to sea are walking along the ground and they think he's a rock, and they accidentally step on him, and they get the spine up into the foot, and he delivers a very, very potent dose of venom. So you have to get yourself to the hospital then very quickly and get your anti-venom. So the dorsal fin keeps the fish upright, like I was saying. It can be quite spiny. The soft dorsal fin, as it sounds, is a little bit softer. It's not as spiny as the main dorsal fin. The pectoral fins help to move the fish from side to side, also known as arm fins, but I think we will stay a little bit more scientific and call them pectoral fins. These are the pelvic fins, and they help the fish to move up and down, but they also, as I said, help with balance, and as do the anal fins. Okay guys, we'll leave the presentation there and we'll head off to start our dissection. And what I'll do first is I'll talk a little bit about the species mackerel that we're going to dissect, and then we'll move into our dissection. Hi guys, the fish that we're going to be dissecting today is a mackerel. It's a species of mackerel. Now mackerel is a term that covers many different species, but the species that we're going to be looking at specifically is the Atlantic mackerel, which is this guy here, or possibly this girl here. Now the Atlantic mackerel, like his name suggests, lives in the Atlantic Ocean and can be found between Ireland all the way over to Canada and America, and all the way up towards Norway, so anywhere within the Atlantic Ocean. And the species is what's known as a pelagic species. And a pelagic species is a type of fish that swims in the open ocean. So not right at the surface, not at the bottom. Fish that swim along the bottom are called demersal fish. So this one swims out in the open ocean, and they're very, very migratory, so they travel huge distances. And they can swim quite fast, so you see their body shape is quite like a torpedo. And there's no appendages that are sticking off either side, so there's a minimum drag. There's no water, no appendage sticking out that can slow it down in the water. So it's built for speed, and it's got the tail that would indicate a fast swimming fish as well, similar to that of a tuna. Now these guys swim in big shoals and big schools of fish, and they are predatory, so they do eat other fish, smaller fish like sand eels. But they are a really, really important food source as well for lots of different species like dolphins and some species of whale, seabirds and sea lions and seals and other fish. Even other bigger mackerel will feed on these mackerel, and bigger species of mackerel. Now when it comes time to lay their eggs, what the female will do is she'll move up towards the surface of the water and she'll lay all of her eggs there. And those eggs develop into zooplankton, or they are zooplankton, and they feed on other phytoplankton and other zooplankton until they get a bit bigger, and then they start to feed on things like sand eels. So when we're dissecting the fish, what I'll do is, first of all, we'll talk about the external anatomy of the fish, and this is going to be a very similar anatomy to a lot of bony fish, which is what this is. They're called teleosts, fish that have lots of bones. And we'll do the external anatomy first, and then after we've gone through all of the different parts of the outside of the fish, we'll have a look on the inside of the fish. Now, if it's a little bit too gruesome for you, that's absolutely fine. You can just stop the video. I know when we dissected a squid in the last class, a few students didn't really feel like it was their kind of thing, so that's absolutely fine. You can enjoy the first part of the class, of the lesson, and you don't have to look at the dissection. One last thing I will say about this fish is that it's a fish that's highly sought after by people because it's quite a tasty fish, and it has a lot of very, very healthy omega-3 oils. So it's really, really sought after in the fishing industry, which can lead to a problem of overfishing. So if we take all of the mackerel out, then other species are losing a food source, and eventually you just run out of mackerel, so even people won't be able to eat it. But we'll go over and we'll have a look at the external anatomy now, and then the internal anatomy, and yeah, hopefully you guys can learn a lot. Hi guys, so I don't have access to a lab, so for our dissection we will be doing it in my kitchen at home. So welcome to my kitchen. I have our mackerel here. So I said we would talk about the external anatomy first, and that's what we're going to do. So I've already mentioned briefly his caudal fin, which is his tail, and you can see by the shape of it that it's the type of tail that is used to propel the fish very quickly in a side-to-side motion so the fish can swim very, very fast. Okay, we'll have a look at the rest of his fins now. So on his back he has a dorsal fin, and the dorsal fin helps him to stay balanced in the water without flopping from side to side. Keeps him nice and steady. And he has a soft dorsal fin at the back here as well, which also helps with that. Then we have the pectoral fins, which are these two here on either side, and they assist with turning left and right, and also stop the fish from rolling over on its side as well. So used for balance, but also for turning left and right. Then we have the pelvic fins, and the pelvic fins assist the fish in going up and down, but also, again, maintaining balance. And last but not least, we have the anal fin then, which also helps the fish to keep balanced. Okay, so there are all of your different fins that the fish has. Now notice the two different colours. I know when we were talking about sharks, I mentioned this before. It's got a really dark coloration on the top and then a really pale silvery belly. Okay, can you guys remember why that was? Why do you think the fish might have those two different colours? Okay, so you can pause the video and have a little think about that before we continue on. So you can remember I said that this fish is a predator, so it hunts fish like sand eels, smaller fish than it, but also it gets fed on by it gets predated by other fish as well, and dolphins and sharks and seabirds and a whole heap of other animals. So what this fish wants to do is, if there's a predator like a shark that's swimming around, if it's swimming above it looking down, the fish wants to blend in with the abyss, which is why it has this dark mottled, this dark kind of striped coloration on the back. Okay, and that helps it blend in with the dark blue of the open ocean. Now if a predator is underneath looking up, the white or the silver helps it blend in with the glint of the sun on the top of the surface. So either way you look at it, the fish is quite camouflaged. And this helps when it's actually hunting as well, so it can sneak up on its own prey. Okay, so if you come in for a closer look, something else I talked about in the sharks that I'm going to talk about in this fish now is the lateral line. So you can actually see it if you zoom in on the camera just all along here. This is this fish's lateral line, and what the lateral line allows the fish to do is to pick up minute vibrations and pulses in the water. So that could be from a potential predator, giving this fish vital seconds to escape, or it could be from a prey fish, allowing this fish to detect where its prey is to go after it. Now, unlike us, we breathe in air. So we breathe in oxygen from the air around us. And when it comes down into our lungs, gas exchange happens where the oxygen goes from our lungs into our bloodstream and gets brought to all of the organs that we need. Fish have a little bit of a different breathing system, a respiratory system, in the fact that they don't have lungs, but what they have that allows them to breathe underwater is gills. And the gills of the fish are protected under a piece of the body called the operculum. And that is this bit here, what looks like the fish's cheek. If I open it up a little bit, you can see the gills underneath there. And how the fish breathes is, as it's swimming through the water, it will open and close its mouth, so it can open its mouth nice and wide to help it catch its prey, but also to take in lots of water. And the fish can control the pressure of the water in the mouth by opening and closing its mouth. So if it wants to put the water under higher pressure, it just closes its mouth, and that forces the water back over its gills, and then the gills do the job of taking oxygen out of the water and then bringing it around the rest of the body in the blood. So similar to our jobs, to our lungs, the job that our lungs do, the gills do that job. We can have a little look at the mouth then. So you can see the fish mouth can open a small bit, letting water in and out, but when it's going to catch a bit of prey, it wants to make sure that the hole is as big as possible to ensure that it actually catches the prey. So it can open its mouth really, really, really wide to help it suck in some prey. The eyes then, if we go in for a closer look at the eye doesn't have any eyelids, if you notice that, but they do have a little protective shield that helps it against all the salt water and things like that as well. So that is your external anatomy of the fish. What I do want to show you is just how the water flows from the mouth across the gills. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my little homemade bit of seawater here, my bottle of water. So if I pour some water into the fish's mouth, you should see it start to come out the side of the upper column. So I'll pour just a small bit in. Ooh. So the water will flow over the gills, and then the water with the minus the oxygen is expelled back out the side here, and the oxygen is absorbed in through the gills. Okay, so we'll go in for a slightly closer look at the gills now. I have my little dissection kit here. Actually, I'll just take the scissors. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the upper column from one side. Actually, before I do that, I will just show you again, even though you saw it there with the water, just so you can see. If I was to put something in and put it towards, I can actually open the upper column so you can see that the hole goes straight through there. So the water can easily flow in, flow over the gills and flow back out with the oxygen being absorbed in by the gills. Okay, now I will remove the upper column on this side of the fish here. Okay, now you can get a good look at the, might just take a small bit more off there, sorry. You can get a good look at the gills there. And they are folded, all these strands, they're folded over almost all on top of each other. So there's a huge surface area there. There's a lot of space for gas exchange to take place, for oxygen to be taken out of the water and then brought to the rest of the body so that the fish, that's how the fish gets its oxygen. So I'm just going to take out one section of the gills. Okay, so you can see in the air all of the strands of the gill are quite clumped together, but if I put them into some water, there you can see they kind of fan out, so it turns into, it looks kind of like a feather. So there's a huge amount of surface area for lots of gas exchange to take place. So they're a very, very effective organ to absorb oxygen out of the water, so the fish can get its oxygen. Okay, so what we'll do now is we're going to go on to looking at the eye of the fish. So I'll do my best. The good thing about this is that it's a tricky organ to get out without damaging, but you have two goes at it because the fish has two eyes. So I will try, first off, I will try and get the eye out, because what I want to show you is the lens. So bear with me for a second. Now, I haven't used my dissection kit in quite some time, so my scalpel is a little blunt, which isn't ideal. Actually, it's incredibly blunt, which is not ideal at all. And I've damaged this eye quite a bit now, so we'll try eye number 2. Okay. Just get tweezers there. And you guys are quite lucky, because the last time I did a fish dissection, we didn't actually look at the eye at all. So hopefully we get some interesting stuff here. Okay, let's see what we can. It's still stuck in there. And the reason that I'm dissecting the eye, guys, is because I want to get to a specific piece which hopefully I will be able to now. Just going to get the scissors. Now this part is very, very delicate, so I'm going to do my best, but what I'm looking for, just open that a little bit. Now we very delicately peel back the eye. Whoops. Unfortunately not. What I was trying to get was the lens of the eye, but unfortunately the eye is too badly damaged. So I couldn't get the lens out. But the lens is in there and that controls the amount of light that is getting in and out of the eye. We will pause there for the time being. That's the external anatomy of the fish. And we will go on to looking at the internal anatomy of the fish. It turns out that I was actually able to save the eye lens from this eye. So if you guys take a close look, there you go right there. This is the thing that I was after. I apologize if it got slightly graphic there. But this is the lens of the eye, and this controls the amount of light that hits the retina at the back of the eye, which allows the fish to see. So that's really cool. That's the fish eye lens. And I've never actually dissected a fish eye before, so I'm quite happy that I was able to get it out undamaged. Okay guys, so we had a look at the external anatomy. One thing that I didn't mention there that I will mention now is that like we have skin on our body, the fish his body is surrounded by protective scales. So the skin is actually made up of all of scales, and it's a little bit slimy, and what that slime is a protective layer against different bacteria. So the fish has a kind of a protective slime area. And now what we're going to do for this part of the video is we are going to do the internal anatomy. So, as you can see, the fish that we have now, it doesn't come the way you would normally buy it in a shop. Normally when you buy it off in a shop, it has already been gutted, so all of the parts that you can't eat on the inside have already been removed so that you can just bring it home and cook away. But I wanted to get one that still had all those so we can show you all the different bits. So, we will use my scalpel, my very blunt scalpel, and see how well it can cut through. So I'm just going to make a single incision from the fish's anus all the way up to the gills, hopefully without damaging any of the internal organs. What I might do is actually use the scissors just because that is very blunt. Okay guys, so I just got a little bit of extra light there, sorry for pausing the video, just to give you guys a better view of what we're looking at. So if you can see this very dark organ here, so this is the head of the fish, and then you've still got some the gills in there. You've still got some of the gills in there, it's a little bit slippy. If you see this very dark organ here, this organ is very, very dark because a lot of blood has been going in and out of it when the fish was alive. And this is the fish's heart. So I'm just going to pull that out. There you go. So that is the heart of the macro. Okay, we'll leave that to one side for the moment. Whoops. We'll leave the heart to one side for the moment. The next thing I want you guys to look at, I'm going to use my finger for this, is this big organ here. And this is a big fatty organ, and it is the fish's liver. So that's the liver. The next thing you should notice is this big tube that comes from the mouth of the fish the whole way down. You see this kind of dark brownish tube? Whoop. This one here. Now it goes the whole way down. That is the fish's digestive tract. So it's the fish gut coming the whole way down, down to where waste is expelled. The next thing you should notice, guys, is the two white organs either side of the gut. And this is how we can tell if it is a male or a female fish. You can pause the video there if you want to try and hazard a guess as to which it is. It's a little tricky to identify from just the video though. So this is a male, and they are his gonads, his testes. And what's unfortunate about the timing that this fish was caught is that they're quite swollen, so it seems as if he was getting ready to spawn, which means that he was caught before he spawned, so potentially there was a loss then of a new generation. The flesh here on the side is the part that people eat, so that's the prized possession of a mackerel, so it's really rich in fatty acids, in omega-3 oils and protein. I'm just going to snip the digestive tract here and get it up out of the way so you guys can get a better view. And I'll just pull the digestive tract and the liver up out of the way there, so you can get a better view of the gonads there. And in fact, what I can do is I'll actually snip them out altogether so you can get a proper look. And they are the gonads there. So he was ready to spawn, but unfortunately he was caught before he got a chance to. And yeah. So there you have it, guys. That is your dissection of a mackerel fish. I'm sorry we couldn't do it in class, which would have been pretty interesting for you guys to see it firsthand. There's the stomach, guys, just in case you're wondering. So as part of the digestive tract, the stomach is obviously part of that, and that's the stomach there. I'm sorry you guys didn't get to witness it firsthand, but I hope the video was interesting and that you learned a good bit, and enjoy the rest of the online class.